there's a certain set of skills that you can learn, about how to repair things or recycle things or make your own food. There's a certain level of skills, but I think it's actually, the main thing is deeper than that. And it's about this question of what brings me happiness, what brings me contentedness, and realising that it's not about the things that I buy, it's about other things in life. I think that's the key. If we understood that, then many of us would happily live a low carbon life, realising that it's actually a better life. It's a less stressed life, it's a more contented life. If we made that mind shift, this wouldn't be a difficult exercise, this would be a fun exercise. I'm Mark Delaney, and while I'm an Australian, my family and I have lived for much of the last 20 years with the poor in India. I was studying law, and I kind of got to the end of the degree and thinking, what do I want to do? What's my life about? And my faith kind of informed that experience as well. And so in the end, I decided I don't want to go that normal career path. I want to see if I can do something to help the world be a better place. And I was pretty lucky that I found in my wife, Kathy, someone on a very similar journey. We left to India to basically because it's got a lot more poverty than Australia has, to see if we could make a difference. And we had no idea whether we could. We thought we'd go and give it a try. So when we went to India, we went to the capital, New Delhi, and really from day one, we moved into a pretty poor neighbourhood. We lived in this room for a number of years, and then we lived in this room for a number of years. So that was kind of our whole house, really. It was one room, and it was kind of our bedroom, our study room, our entertaining room, our dining room, everything, really. So yeah, we lived in that colony for about 10 years. So the whole colony is built on a piece of land about the size of the Melbourne Cricket Ground. And we think it's home to about 70 or 80,000 people because most families are living in one room, about the size of this. And you might have, mum and dad, a couple of kids, uncle, auntie, grandma. And so you've got a whole family, in one room. And you put three of those on top of each other. And that's what gives you this enormous population density. Huge numbers of people live in very close quarters. So that was what we wanted to do. We figured, if you want to help someone, the best thing to do to start with is to understand what their lives are like and understand what their problems are, rather than reading about it in a book. So that first year was really hard work with learning language and just learning how to live in a tiny space and learning, not to have running water and whatever. So it was hard work. Out the back of the place, we just had some hessian, and we rigged up a little bit of a toilet.
I think that's what was there, and then we kind of...
Eventually we bricked it up, didn't we? And to get to the toilet, we had to come out of this trapdoor, down the steps and into this place here. And it was a heck of a job trying to build it. But that was a tiny place, wasn't it? That was about
7 foot by 9 foot.
7 foot by 9 foot, yep. Over the first year or so, we got some good language, we got to know people, and then we started to be able to do some things. Basically, we've kind of become a middle person to try to help link people to government services that should be available to the poor, but often the poor are locked out of those services through corruption or lack of identity documents or whatever. So we've been able to link people to existing services, medical services, educational services, things like that. That's kind of our thing. Probably the main misconception that in the West we have about India and about poverty is that the poor are poor because it's their own fault. And that's this great kind of middle class misunderstanding of life, that most of the poor are wonderful people, hardworking people, just trying to get by, but it's the systems that make them poor. If you work hard all day and you can only just earn enough to feed your family, that's not your fault. That's the fault of the system. Yeah, so I guess we went to India wanting to live really simply, not for environmental reasons. This is back in the 90s where, climate change wasn't really on the agenda so much. But then as the 90s went and the 2000s came and we started reading more about climate change, we realised that this is an enormously significant issue, and this is going to adversely affect the poor much more than the rich, and the poor are our friends. It's going to really change their lives. We're meeting farmers whose crops weren't growing properly and hearing about people in Bangladesh that had already lost their land to sea level rise. So we realised this is enormously significant. And then we kind of realised, wow, in the West, our carbon footprint is so enormous. We're contributing to this thing that's affecting the poor who haven't caused it, and that's enormously unfair. So then we started looking at our own carbon footprint in India and realised, well, it's actually pretty small. I wonder if we can translate that back to the West to a very small carbon footprint as well. So that, when we came back in 2014 for a break, we came back with that mindset of, can we keep our carbon footprint down as small as it was in India? In most of these enterprises, we go to help, but in the end, we end up learning more than we give. If you asked our neighbours who have helped, pretty significantly, they say, no, you've given much more than you've received, but we have received an enormous amount. And I guess the big thing that we've received is a sense of fulfilment and looking back on the first 50 years of our life and saying, yeah, that was a good way to spend that time. We're glad with what we've done. And if we had our time over, we would have done it again.